This is Mary here from Boom Learning. So today we're going to focus on some common issues people are encountering in our editor. So I'm going to introduce Eric Oemig, and he's going to walk you through some common issues with creating.
We're talking about creating boom cards in this little section. So I've brought up the editor, I've got a deck up, and the first thing I want to say is to introduce you to the template card. So up here, anything you do to the template card shows up on all of the other cards. And for the most part, you want to do all of your design and layout on the template card, because then if you make a mistake and you say, you know, I really didn't like the title here like this, I wanted it bigger, I wanted it something, it's just easy and everything replicates. And then to change it on any other screen, you just change cards, double tap, new title, and double tap, new image, and you can really go quickly through your development that way. Let's take a look at, like, if I bring a multiple choice out. If I bring out a multiple choice answer block, it's going to show up on every card, and again, I can just quickly change answers without having to worry about my design, my layout, my etc. And then this is kind of my pet peeve. So this is like, if you want to make me happy, never use one of these things without making a change to the background color. So when we did this, we saw, you know, that blue is such a lovely background blue. I don't know if you can kind of notice it in there. Let me just delete one of these, one of these elements. So you can see that lovely blue in there. Oh, we toyed with that color shade of blue a long time. I really became fond of it. And now I've grown to despise it, because people aren't aware that you can actually change that in here. Like, you can change anything so it can match your background. And one of the things that I can tell when we have a new designer is they've got these gorgeous cartoony backgrounds, and they haven't done anything with this background. They're keeping the same blue. And so it becomes a really undesirable contrast. So just always know you can really design all the elements here. We give a lot of power. Another thing that I want to introduce you to is the item toolbar over here on the right-hand side. Pretty much anything you select, you're going to see some tools at the bottom for whatever it is. So there's some text tools, some container tools, some image tools. If we select the sound, we'll have some sound tools down here. And go ahead and explore those. So for instance, on this item container, I want it to have a different layout. I'd really like it to be a stacked vertical column. So I can send it to one column, or I could make it, you know, something like this, where it's a stacked row of things. So there's a lot of power in here if you can look around. Another thing I want to point out is whether you want your answers to randomize or not can be set in here. Someone today asked about Z order. And since I just talked about the template card, it's a perfect place to answer that question about Z order. So Z order really matters when you want stuff to show up in front or behind something else. So this guy is floating behind there, and we maybe want it to be in front. So you all know how Z order works, but here's the one gotcha. If I say, if I go to another card and let me drag out a button, this button is going to float over the top of everything that's defined on the template card, even if I say I want to send it all the way to the back. So I selected it, I said go all the way to the back, and whoops, and then I just resized him by accident. Let's get him up here and make a bigger size. Okay, he's still like, what's happening? The issue is items that are on the card are considered foreground items. Items on the template are not, they're background items. And so if you actually want something to float behind some of those other parts of your card, you need to change your design. Either move this button onto the template card or take something from the template card and promote it to the actual card. A really common mistake that people can get into, whether they're doing drag drop or something else, is, oh, here's a great example. I'm going to go ahead and let me actually switch back to my template card. That's where I'm doing most of my design. I say, you know, I want to put a nice little stylized text thing like here, and I'm going to say this is, we'll call this a subtitle. So I've got a subtitle, and if you remember how I made that, I dragged a button out. And if you look real close, you can see a green halo around this. Let's see, can I zoom in here a little bit? So you see that green halo around these and the red halos? That means it's an answer. Nobody meant for that to be an answer. And if I preview this card, the student's gonna hit the correct answer, and it's not gonna advance. And they go, why doesn't it work? Oh, I'm getting these blue circles and what's going on? I can never figure this out. And if I submit it, it says I haven't found all the right answers. And that's because this subtitle is an actual answer.
Eric?
Yes.
We had someone who was curious, wondering if you could explain the difference between grid, flow, and fixed containers.
Yeah, I love that question. Perfect. So this is a grid container, and what it means is it's rows and columns, and we'll just keep, so I'm going to select one, and just to show you, actually, I'm going to go back to my template card. I'm going to select one of these guys, and I'm going to duplicate it with Command D. Now I can also try, I'm going to say Command C and paste. Let's see, and paste. No, let me try that again. Command copy, paste, paste, paste. Okay, so this is just rows and columns, and I've kind of showed you how you can lay that out. When you make it a fixed thing, and let's delete now a couple of these. I'm gonna multi-select. Okay, so what I did there, I went fast. I selected the item, and then I shift-clicked to select more than one item. So I was able to delete several things at once. And let's go ahead and just delete one more here. If I select the container and I change it to a flow layout, it's very similar to the grid layout, but different things will happen based on the size of the object. We'll see different flow behaviors. So we'll get different wrapping. So this is it's not, see now it's no longer fixed, it's just going to do the best fit it can. So flow layout is a standard HTML style. It's not really the most handy layout, but if you have strange things in your layout sizes, non-standard things, it can be a nice one to work. And it has some advantages over fixed. Now let's talk about fixed layout. Fixed layout is where each item inside there is really stuck exactly where you want it, and it's not going to move. And even if you resize it, it's not going to move. So if you look, that item that doesn't look like it's in there anymore is still in there. And what we'd want to do with these is, if we're trying to do something really complicated for drag and drop, where we have, and let me just take this guy out, and I'm going to select this. So I'm going to take Command copy on that rocket. I'm going to select the container, and now I'm going to paste to insert this inside the container. And because I'm in a fixed layout on my container, we can see here, oh, this is a good one. See, it says randomize. 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, you do not want to randomize your fixed layout. You get them where you want them, and you don't want them to move. The one time where you would want them to move is if you had maybe a bunch of answers, and one author had like different stars. And so the stars are all the same shape, but sometimes they're right or wrong, whatever. And she really did want them to randomize in there. And so she made her fixed container the entire size of the screen, so the stars randomized all over the place. But let's take a look at what this looks like. I have the rocket in the top corner here. And if I randomize this and I preview it, now my rocket's not in the top corner. This thing moved to the top corner. And so that's useful if you really do want to randomize stuff where that makes sense. It oftentimes doesn't, but let's talk. The real virtue of the fixed container is so you can build up really complicated items for drag and drop or randomizing. So actually, let me take this guy out. So I've got I basically just created a caption pick. And if I want to do something with drag drop on this now,
Eric, can I pause you for a moment? Can you walk through very slowly how you made that caption pick, the cut paste process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to,
since you're going to briefly talk about drag and drop, we also have a question. Some people want to know about whether you can combine correct and draggable and what that means.
Yeah, I was going to cover that, and maybe I'll say it twice. When you're using drag and drop, do not use correct. So let me give you an example. So this one here, the rocket's supposed to be a correct answer. But then I go and I say, I really want to make that a drag and drop thingy. So I'm going to come up here and say it's draggable. I just turned off the answer option for it. But then sometimes people think, oh, wait, no, I need that to be an answer. And then they turn it back on. And then now I've cleared the draggable. Well, somehow, and I don't know how people manage to do this, maybe it's because it's on a template card or something, they'll actually get into a case where it has both an answer and it's draggable. That's never a good idea. And here's why. An answer, the way, I'm going to just drag out a drop zone here. Drop here. Now let's give it a little background and make it a drop zone. Okay. This is not an answer. Why is it not an answer? Because it's not wired up to anything. It's a wrong answer. The only way to make it a right answer is to grab this thing. Whoa, that was weird. I think I'm going to refresh my page. If you saw, my mouse was not tracking for some reason. Anytime you get a weird, and I pretty much can guarantee you this because I zoomed my screen before and then I unzoomed it, and something in the browser zoom state got confused. So now when I drag this, it's going to properly track my mouse. But what I did was I refreshed the page. If you ever get any weird artifacts because your browser gets dirty from a lot of the work you're doing, it's okay to just refresh. On the Mac, it's Command R. On a Windows machine, it's F5. And that'll get you back to a clean state. So, so now this is a correct answer. And if I want to make another correct answer, like this airplane, that'll make it draggable. Currently, that's the wrong answer. I don't have to say it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not wired up. So now I drag it up here, and now I've got two correct answers. But more importantly, I actually have two answers that are required. And if the student doesn't put both the plane and that rocket in there, it's not going to work. But when I select the drop zone, I can come over here, and now I can see it's requiring two items. And I can change this to say, no, I only need one. I need exactly two. I need them all. Or I need at least one. So I can have at least one, exactly. So you have some options you can toggle through in here. Another common mistake that can happen is, let me show you what this wants. Let's say exactly two answers. And let's wire up one more of these just so I can really do a good job demonstrating this. There's three possible answers, but I need to get exactly two. But it could be any two of the three that are selected. And this is a wrong answer because it's not wired up. But what happens if I go in here and I delete this object? When I select the drag zone, it's still wired up. Our system wasn't quite smart enough to realize you deleted it from the card and that the drop zone's expecting it. So now I could say exactly three, and it's looking for three answers. And one of them is missing from the card. So you can also, if you're ever having any trouble because you've deleted some items from your thing, just confirm that there's nothing weird here, and you can clear them all out like that, and then just rewire them up.
Eric, we had a question.
Yep.
Are drop zones always rectangular? The Carol says she made one that looked like a circle by changing the radius, but it acts like a rectangle when she's dragging.
That is correct. They are always rectangular, regardless of how you shaped it. So I can make a circle by changing here the corner radius on this guy. So I'm making a circle this way, but it's still really, as far as the code is concerned, it's the enclosing rect is what we're using to compute where it's allowed to be dropped. And that brings up another great question, which is, some people say, sometimes when they're running this, they say, I can't, like, it's not working. So let me just make this thing really big and preview what this looks like. So I'm going to try and drag my rocket in here, and it's like, why won't it drop? And sometimes, no matter what they do, they can't get that thing to activate to allow the drop. It just, like, it won't drop. And the reason why is because we require, and we, from hard experience, we learned 55% of an object has to fit in the drop zone before we activate the drop zone. And the reason why we do that is because when authors put many drop zones close together, it becomes really difficult for the kid to hit the right one. So make your drop zones a little bit bigger than you might think they need to be, because little hands have some coordination issues, and make your draggables sufficiently smaller so that when the children are dragging these up, it fits, it activates, and everything works great.
We also have a question that's come up on Facebook. Blurry images. Why does it happen? What's the solution?
Okay, good. And another, I think, question has come up on GIFs, and so they're all kind of related. So when you upload your own custom image, we are working in a canvas that's 700 by, I don't know, see this if I go over here to the size, a 700 by 500 pixel canvas. And because of certain things on screen doubling and pixel sizes, we'll allow an image that's as big as 1400 pixels by 1000 pixels. Anything bigger than that, and we start compressing it. And then anything that has a very large file size, we start compressing it. And when we compress it, I guarantee you, we can't do as good a job as a premium Adobe app or something that you buy for your computer. Your computer can do a better job compressing than we can, but it gets even worse than that. Safari in particular, Apple thinks that, you know, through their infinite experience, is that when they're scaling images, they want to look really good for pictures and selfies and things like that. And so they like to do what's called a blurry scale. And so they deliberately blur their images. And sometimes it's really tough to get the browser to stop doing that. So if you see that your items in Safari are getting blurred, it's because Safari is scaling your image, and we weren't able to give it enough hints to turn off the blur. But so all those things are great things you can do to stop us from compressing, stop us from scaling, and stopping Safari from scaling. Is just don't, bigger is not better with the images. Big images chew up a lot of student bandwidth. Schools and at home, they don't have good bandwidth. Sometimes they're on cell phones or whatever. We do our best to compress everything down to make this so that they load quickly and they play well. And sometimes blurry is a side effect of that.
A related question: what's the ideal maximum file size, both in megabytes and in pixels?
So the ideal maximum is 1400 pixels wide by 1000 pixels tall. That's a maximum. So if you're doing a background image, that's what you'd want to do. And then any image over 300K is going to get compressed. So for size, I like you to compress, and more for more reasons than just you know, getting, you know, the upload size and everything. Is we try not to second guess our authors too much. We think you guys know best. So if you can make, if you're going to use a rocket like this in your images, don't give me a rocket like this to work with and have the browser scale and we scale and we compressing and everything. Keep it closer to what the actual size would be in your artwork. And that's ideal. And it's ideal for two reasons. One, the browser has to do less work to scale it. And number two, the network bandwidth and the loading time is going to be quicker and more responsive for the students. So the optimal size is smaller is better. But if you go over 300, I am guaranteeing you, it won't leave the browser. When you hit upload, we use the browser's built-in compression to shrink your images before they hit our server. Okay.
GIFs.
All you need to know for GIFs is they're the same everything else. So if they're too big, they're going to get pressed and they won't play. If you want to play, they're small, 200K, 250K, anything gets certain bigger than that, and they're going to get, when they get compressed, they get turned into a static image. Otherwise, you just upload them and use them as usual.
Carol asked, if we add a bunch of pictures per slide, I'm assuming that's cumulative with respect to how it impacts playability.
How it impacts playability, yes. How it impacts image size and quality, absolutely not. You should feel comfortable putting images on an artwork into your designs, but there's some things that I don't necessarily recommend. Using a lot of fonts are expensive, and browsers really don't, they're really hard for the browser. So, and we have a hard limit of, I don't know if it's 6 or 8 in a deck. So really, I think 1 or 2, maybe 3 fonts is enough for a deck. Don't use any more than that. And then we had one author who put 150 stars on her template card as individual images, and that's probably better handled as a background image, right? Because then you have one image. It turned out it wasn't as horrible as it sounded, because she really reused about 7 pictures a whole bunch of times because they were slightly different colored stars. And so the computer didn't have to download 150 images. It only had to download 7 images and then reuse them a whole bunch of times. But again, on slow machines, Kindles and iPads, image manipulation is expensive computationally. So, some minimalism and restraint is always a good thing. Putting video in the card, first of all, is an experimental feature, which it says right here, it's an experimental feature. You can usually just copy and paste the YouTube Vimeo URL as when it's seen. Sometimes the tiny URLs or whatever that they're generating are not, I have parsing them. And in that case, you'll get garbage. But if you just take the last, like in those URLs, there's a video ID. It usually say something like V equals or something, or VID equals, some cue that this is an ID number. And if you just type that thing in there, then we'll know to go to YouTube and get the right video, and we can stick it in here. And so video works better if it's big and full screen, and that's pretty much all you have to do. But now let me tell you why this is still experimental and why I'm not going to suggest you sell this to anyone. Use it for your private decks maybe, but many schools block YouTube, and your customers can be real unhappy if they buy a deck and they can't play the video that you've embedded in it. Also be careful that you have the rights to embed a video link, that you're not linking somebody else's stuff. And if you're trying to sell it, and then we did have some, early on, we had some authors who were real excited about working with video, and they had very good things to say about Vimeo if they bought one of the cheaper premium plans, for giving them customization and locking their videos and doing some other things that were helpful. But so I don't want to spend a lot of time about video. It's really not a supported feature. We're still trying to figure out the best ways to make it work. And I think until we scale up and start actually hosting video and becoming our own little mini version of YouTube, I don't think it's going to work out too great. And yeah, so let's just leave the video at that. And then I want to circle back because there was a couple questions about the advanced container thing. And I think that's, let me just start from a fresh page. I'm going to drag out any container. It could be this container or it could be this one. Those are both just containers. And guess what? That's actually a container too. So let me go ahead and oops, delete these containers. And you go like, so what does it mean to be a container? So a container is this thing that wraps around and you can stick stuff in. And so when I select a fraction, if we look down here, it's just a container. It's a fixed container. And then inside of it, I've got 3 text items. Even this little line here right there is a text item with a border, but it's really small. And so you can do some clever designing here to make stuff. And the one quick caveat I want to give you is if you have like a multiple choice, some people, actually this is probably not the best example. Let me do this a different way. Whoops. Let me select this and let me drag out multi-pictures because this is kind of what people will do. They'll say, yeah, I'm going to put a picture here and I'm going to have these randomize, and then I'm going to stick something in front of it like some text. And when I play this, you might already see the problem. The pictures underneath are going to randomize, but the text is in front and it's not going to randomize. And I can't tell you how many times people go like, I don't know what's happening. Like it's not working. You know, it looks great. And sometimes when I play it, it works. And sometimes when I play it, doesn't. And that's because the text is in fixed place and the images are moving around all over the place. And so we just have to be a little bit careful. That can look like, actually, now that I think about the most common example of that is if someone puts, yeah, let me see, I've seen it done like this. Someone imports some PowerPoint background or something, and so there's answers right here. Let's pretend those are background image answers. They're not going to randomize, right? And I go, okay, this is great. So I'll take a multiple choice and I'll turn off the background color. And then I get rid of the words. And I just drag this up like this. And they go like, see? And that's brilliant. That would work. Except for what's going to happen is this is marked as a good answer. When I play it, it's going to get randomized. And then it's not going to be the right answer. The stuff behind it isn't going to get randomized. So when I preview this thing, you can see like the box is randomized. The text behind it didn't randomize. So when the kid clicks on something, like what the heck's the right answer? How can we tell? So just be careful that you understand the layers and what's getting randomized and what's not. And then along on that, I've seen some people try to build up fractions the same way, where they make a really big box like this. I guess I better get rid of some of this stuff too here. Select, delete. Oh, I hit the wrong key. That's okay. So some people try to just make fractions by like writing stuff over the top or dragging the fraction on the top and saying, okay, well, now that's going to be right and that's right. Now the fraction's not moving, but the right and wrong answers are moving, so that wouldn't work. But we have a great solution, and I showed this a little bit earlier, but in case you missed it, I'm going to copy this fraction and I'm going to select the outer container. So let's try that again. I'm going to take my container here. You can see I've got a container selected. I've got selected. I'm going to say copy, which puts it into my clipboard, and then I'm going to select the outer container. You can see I've got the container selected, and then I'm going to paste it in there. And now it will randomize. The whole container is going to randomize, not some bits of it, whatever. And then, of course, now I don't need it out here anymore. That was just to get me started. And I can duplicate this guy by cloning it. And then I can change these. And now I've got randomizing fractions. But that could be randomizing pictures with captions, or sound with captions, or pictures with sound, or anything that you wanted. And so this outer container is, right, everything's traveling together. And if you ever wonder if you've done it quite right, if you haven't, let me go ahead and grab an image and see if we can add that to the container. There, see, it's in the container, right? No, it's not. I just put it on top, and I can prove that by, see, it's not traveling with it. So to get it inside, I would have to select it, copy it, select the container, right, get the outer container, and then paste it in there. And now it shows up inside of, and it will travel with it when I move it.
Eric, one of the common questions we get around drag and drop is, can we have a monster eat a critter or something? Could you just explain the Z order and drag and drop so people understand why that's always in the front? Yes,
got it. Okay, so the whole Z order thing is, there's really, I think I might have said there's 2 layers. I guess we could really say there's 3. So anything you put on the template card is always going to be behind everything that you put on an actual card. So if I put something on a template card and then I put something different on this card, this guy is always in front, and I'm never going to change that, except for, and here's the 3rd layer, anything that gets marked as draggable gets automatically promoted to our super layer, which is in front of everything. And we have to do this so that items don't get hidden and lost, and kids can always get a hold of them to drag them around. So those things float to the top. Now, if you have 2 draggable items, the Z order still matters, because, see, this guy's behind here. Let's make him draggable. Okay. Now he can float in front, but I could send him to the back. Now he's going to float behind. And so when you're playing your game, this is going to float behind. Now, Mary said, how can you make it so something disappears on the screen? So let's watch what happens. So this guy's in front of this guy. Wait a minute. Let me see, like that. Yeah. So the thing that you're actively dragging gets promoted to the absolute top, and it floats. But what the trick that people have done to make it look like the animal's eating it or hiding it is, after you drop it, this guy is behind it in the editor. He floats to the top, and when I let go, he gets dropped. He's back there. And this is actually a draggable. And so, so that's your trick. If you want to really, like, when one of our very clever authors came up with that hack, I had no idea how she did it. I mean, I was as startled as anyone. I'm like, wow, that's a really neat trick. And I feel a little bit bad for betraying her super secret, really neat hack, but that's it. So what you would do is you would make your drop zone there, wire that up. Whoops, wire it up. Let me refresh my screen. Okay, wire it up. They're wired up there. Make this like that, and then if I stick this right over the top, now when I play it, it's like ta-da! But if anyone thought to move this, which there's no visual cue that they should, and then they can see the magic behind the curtains. Okay.
I have a question I'm going to go ahead and answer. Jane had said she has people asking her to convert decks into Google Slides. What would we say to those folks? So Google Slides is really a different experience. From an author's perspective, if you're working in Google Slides, you have to take a lot more steps to keep the clip art safe. We disable right click so people can't just kind of grab clip art from the Boom Cards decks. Google doesn't do that, so you have to take extra steps to flatten your clip art. Clip art that might be allowed for Boom Cards because we take extra steps to keep it from being copied is not necessarily licensed for Google Slides. So for the author, you can't just, and we don't have an export to Google Slides tool. They don't just export. They're really like mini apps. The metaphor I've been using to explain to people when they ask, can I merge two decks, is that you're basically asking us to merge a level of Candy Crush with a level of Tetris. They have different underlying base ways of behaving, so we can't just smush them together and have it work. So my perspective is they're just completely different experiences. They're different bases. If you want to author for Google Slides and Boom Cards, you're welcome to. And yes, you're exactly right. You don't need to move them into Google Slides. They just need to paste the fast pin into wherever they assign Google, and the student will get the experience. It won't record any progress, but it would be just as if they played a Google Slide. They get the experience of playing the deck, and probably a better experience for the student anyway. We had some people just curious about moving cards around. We don't yet have a slide sorter, but could you just show them how to reorder cards?
Yeah, sure. So this is what we call the slide picker, and you can drag them like this, and they'll just reorder. I know there's been some people that said, well, this can be really inconvenient if I've got something way at the bottom and I want to get it all the way up to the top. And yep, you're right. It is inconvenient to do that. And we'll like to improve the sorting options, but not today.
So when I'm in my kind of at the top level of the decks, like outside of not working on a deck, and I can see exactly folders, I can't, it seems like when I'm at the top level, everything is there. So I can't tell what I've already put in a folder and whether it's in a folder. It's just, I'm just getting confused. Is that true? Is everything at that top level?
You know, that's a good question. You know, I think it probably is. I think this is everything you've created.
Right.
And then you can filter it by saying which ones were published.
Right. So it's really more of a filter than a folder.
Yeah, there's this here. I think you're right. We probably should have an option to say, like, show me only stuff that's not foldered, like we do in the library. Here we have an unfoldered option.
Oh, cool.
And it'll show you, like, these haven't been categorized yet, so go ahead and drag them in. Oh, and by the way, we just added this last night. If you tap in the here, it'll expand. Some people, I'm completely off script there, but sure.
That's okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so it wasn't just me. And another completely different question. Could you show how to human score? Like, I just don't see how the teacher does that.
Are you interested in making those kinds of things, or are you just wondering about how to score them?
No, I'm totally making them, and I'm having problems.
Okay, so
because my answers are showing up under some of the buttons I've put on the deck. Like, oh, I've got it. So I really just need to understand how they're done so I can design my decks more accurately.
Oh, I think I might understand what you're saying. So if you say that this one has a couple answers, it could be George, or it could be Washington, or it could be George Washington. So these are all acceptable answers.
Yeah.
And I think what this is going to look like to the scorer is this. And we want to say it's open response, so anything's allowed. This is the way you make it a human gradable. Otherwise, it's not human gradable.
Right.
And these are the exemplar answers. And so I actually did this in a bad way because I wouldn't have had to say this. I could have said George Washington's the exemplar answer.
Okay.
But I could go on and say, and for bonus points, if they mention the wooden teeth, you know, all the better. Okay, so submit that thing. So now that's the exemplar that they're going to see. And they're going to pretty much see it just like this. So if you gave a small thing for the student to type, and then you had this kind of hanging out nearby, that's what it's roughly look like for the grader. And then I think the kids' answers is typed along the top up here. I think it says student says this, and then it says here's the possible answers, and it's just going to define it to whatever you have. So if you have a really large open response area, it's going to look like that. And if it's a really small one, it's going to look different.
I want to thank you all for coming. Again, have a lovely afternoon.